I believe that the world is going to be a better place when politicians say the word vagina in a courtroom. Because I don't know if you've heard the good news, but there's this thing that when done twice a week, reduces your chances of heart disease by 50%. One study showed that 40% of people on antidepressants were able to get off medication and replace it with this alone. It boosts the immune system. It helps us sleep better. It's also a huge contributor to the economy. It generates $15 billion last year alone. Over 1 million products on Amazon are sold to help us do it. And a lot of surveys have shown that actually we quite like doing it. It's coffee. Okay, it's not coffee, it's sex. It's totally sex. In particular, I'm going to be talking about the sex toy industry. Because here's the thing, as marketers, which I'm sure we have a lot of in the room, we know that sex sells. But how often is it that you actually see the concept of sex itself being sold? So having an orgasm twice a week, either alone or with a partner, reduces your chance of stroke later on in life by 30%. But you don't walk down the street and see public intervention ads saying things like, if you don't have a wank, you're a bloody idiot. Or this one's my personal favorite. It's something I want in every doctor's office around Australia. A stroke a day keeps a stroke away. So it's not just that we ignore sex a little bit. We almost completely deny its existence altogether. Sex, it's treated like an embarrassing drunk uncle at a wedding. If you think about it just from a commercial standpoint, $15 billion annually. Can you think of any other industry where you can't name me one publicly listed company that makes that much money? Or even just a really well-known brand name. Who is the virgin of sex? In the public sector, it's not that much better. So doctors go to medical school for around 5 years minimum. During that time, there is not one module that is dedicated to sex, outside of it being this biological necessity to breed or a pesky disease-spreading activity. And if you don't think that sounds too bad, well, imagine you get hit by a bus. You wake up and you're paralyzed from the waist down. Wouldn't you quite like somebody with a good knowledge of how a body works to tell you what your sex life now looks like? How you're still going to be able to have a cheeky wank. And the public school system isn't that much better. So sex education is not compulsory to teach based on any form of truth at school. And I'm sure we've all read at some point an article lamenting the fact that porn is teaching teenagers in Australia more about sex than any other source. But nothing is done actually at a government level to sort this out. Well, now imagine if I told you that every teenager in Australia was learning to drive a car based on watching The Fast and the Furious. We might ask for something to be done about that, right? So why is sex treated as an afterthought rather than essentially the reason we're all alive and kicking in the room today? Your first instinct might be to say something to me like, look, love, this is all just a bit awkward because this is sex and that is a private thing. I think that awkwardness is actually just a psychological byproduct of us not talking about something openly. If you think about this from a cognitive psychology perspective, we have brains that are wired to keep us out of harm's way so that we live for a very long time. Now, if we don't talk about something openly and out there, it's probably being processed as something that's wrong, something that's harmful, something that should be discouraged. I get to basically be a living case study that honestly nothing wrong happens when you get to this level of comfort of talking about sex. In fact, your life kind of improves. And like all the awkwardness, it kind of just melts away. So I've only been furiously talking about shagging for about 3 years. And before that, I worked in technology and I had never even stepped in a sex shop in my life. When I started out interviewing people about their sex lives, I used to say the word gentleman's ring rather than cock ring just to avoid saying the word cock. I now run an erectile dysfunction resource center for men who have gone through prostate cancer treatment, and I have been told that I talk about penis pumps like wine connoisseurs talk about Merlot. So why don't we just have this history of an open communication around sex? Why have I had to completely immerse myself within the industry just to get to this level? Well, if you look back far enough, we actually do. So the Romans and the Greeks were very sexually open. If you went to most upper-class households in the Roman times, you would find pornographic paintings just displayed casually above dining room tables. And in fact, if you get enough drinks into any archaeologist, or one of them happens to visit the sex shop you're working at, they will tell you that finding a prehistoric dildo is just not that exciting after it's the 35th one you have fallen over that day. And look, this one's broken. They clearly love these things, having a great time. That is a massive stone phallus, which is very distracting, though, so I'm just going to remove it for a second. A lot of our modern day anxieties around sex actually stem in part from a series of laws that were passed in the 1800s. So conservative jurisdiction in Victorian England and the United States created the Obscenity Laws, mainly fueled by moral panic just around the spread of pornography, given inventions like the printing press. So these laws stated that any materials or product that were made for explicitly a sole sexual arousal purpose were criminal, just completely illegal. So this covers pornography, and then later on, the whole sex toy industry gets landed in there as well. Now, 200 years down the line, church and state have done such a good job that a lot of these laws, Victorian laws, are still in place today. The whole sex toy industry is still on the outskirts of mainstream society, kept in the shadows, populated seemingly by weirdos and by perverts, like me. So every Wednesday, I get to work at Passion Fruit. Passion Fruit is a shop on Bridge Road, Richmond, and I get to be the happiest minimum wage retail assistant in the world when I work there. It is designed like a hotel lobby, and our mission is just to reinvent the sex shop with fun, passion, education, and quality. Now, the breadth of people that I get to see and the needs I help to solve is so rewarding, extraordinary, and in stark contrast to what most people think when I say, I work at a sex shop. They think that I help people in anoraks, asking me where all of the very naughty things are kept. And the reality of this couldn't be further from that. I actually just basically help normal people. In particular, I find I'm helping people who have had a trigger point in their lives that's made them have to re-navigate their sexuality and their sex life. So this could be anything from a long-distance relationship, divorce, cancer, depression, menopause, a lot of things that any one of us might go through. So I get to see at an individual level what happens when sex is embraced, re-navigated successfully. In order for us to get this at a societal level and reap the benefits of long-term health, happiness, even a really strong economy around it, we're kind of going to have to get used to talking about it. And to do that, we're going to have to start reversing some of these 200-year-old laws, and that is going to require a politician to bank their whole career on it. Yeah, so even just saying that out loud, that sounds terribly unlikely. The good news is, I don't think we have to wait for it to happen because of technology. So technology is changing the way that we think, talk, and do sex. It is disrupting sex. Now, disruption is this very trendy concept. And we often talk about disruption in terms of industries like taxis and hotels. Now, together, globally, yes, those industries are just fantastic and huge, but they've actually got nothing on sex. They do facilitate you getting to sex, but sex itself, it's a lot bigger. And the even better news is that sex and tech are actually lifelong friends, or natural bedfellows, if you will. The history of tech itself is underpinned by the trend that as soon as we invent something, we try to have sex with it. So, the first electrified domestic appliances, in order. We've got the sewing machine. Then we have the fan, the kettle, the toaster, the vibrator. The vibrator? That's the fifth. The fifth electrified device. So the history of the vibrator in itself is extraordinary. It was actually invented as, firstly, a doctor's tool. A medical condition, an epidemic, if you will, in Victorian England was this condition known as hysteria. Young women were presenting with symptoms such as anxiety, emotional distress, these very strange sudden urges, and a group of very clever doctors figured out that with the application of rigorous pelvic massage, you could relieve these women of these terrible symptoms. Now, they also realized that for the treatment to be fully effective, it took between 20 to 40 minutes to perform. And after long days of doing this, the poor doctor's hands were suffering. So the electrified vibrator, in fact, was just a stimulating device to save doctors from RSI. Now, as you've probably twigged, and as they eventually twigged, in fact, these naughty women were actually just using this for sexual arousal. And the whole thing just gets lumped under the obscenity laws and under the truck with pornography. And now, these days, we would probably call the condition sexual frustration, and no, it is not covered by Medicare. So fast forward a little bit to something more modern. Who has heard of Google? It's pretty good. Google's pretty good, right? So one of the first problems Google was trying to solve was to help people find the porn that they were looking for. Eric Schmidt, one of the founders of Google, had to put his top engineers onto the problem of algorithmically capturing what was happening in pictures that contained a lot of flesh. He still attributes the entirety of Google image functionality to the safe search algorithms that came out of solving this problem. Now, porn itself is actually waiting to be thanked for all kinds of innovations. It is still highly debated whether DVD and video would even be as popular as it is if it was not being used originally as a medium to distribute porn. And here's something else that we're seeing technology do. Technology is helping us collect, create, and analyze more data than ever before. 90% of all human data has been generated in the last 2 years alone. And it confirms what we all suspected. We are all shagging. There is an entire industry, mainly being crowdfunded online, with Fitbit-like devices that are made just to capture data around sexual performance. And I'm going to call this whole industry Fitbits. Yeah. So one of the Fitbits that I'm going to talk about is the Pericoach. So the Pericoach is a pelvic floor exerciser that measures in the vagina how strong your muscles are getting over time doing exercises. Records it on this device, goes straight to the app. Now, why is this revolutionary? Well, adherence rates for pelvic floor exercises, apart from obviously at the moment, everybody's probably squeezing furiously, that tends to happen, is ridiculously low. And the problem is ridiculously high. 80% of women will experience a pelvic floor difficulty at some point in their lives. So feedback is the number one thing to help adherence. Imagine playing Angry Birds and you didn't see any superfluous numbers popping up in the corner. You didn't get to see a bird eat a pig. You'd probably get bored of that game really, really quickly. So just by having a device that we use regularly like this could save us so many medical bills and problems later on in life. Something a bit more fun is the Lovely. The Lovely, it can be worn on any thrusting implement, and it measures number of thrusts per second, calories burned, and afterwards it gives you tips based on your performance. So it's all a lot of fun, but I'm also hoping that a broad implication that will happen out of us using, talking about, and sharing on social media these kind of devices is the crux of all of my various jobs within the sex toy world. And that is myth-busting. So what do I mean by myth-busting? Well, it doesn't matter who I'm talking to, whether it's students at university, doctors, patients, customers. I see the same hang-ups concerning sex, tied to the same group of false ideas every single day. A lot of this is tied to the idea of what is normal. So I can't think of a time when I've worked in shop where a woman hasn't asked me, is it normal, in whispered tones usually, is it normal that I don't orgasm during penetrative sex? And I get to have the amazing job of telling her that's completely normal. 80%, well, that's the stat at the moment, 80% of women can't orgasm just from penetrative sex alone. You need something external usually going on, or it might not happen at all. You're just completely normal, forget what the films are telling you. Closely tied to that is also the notion of what is right and what is wrong. I hear those words bounded around in shop a lot. I'll have people say to me, I'm interested in this, but it's wrong, isn't it? It's so wrong. And, come on. And often to that, I'll just reply with, well, is it consensual? Is it respectful? Are you having a good time? If the answer is yes to all of that, then it's right. It's just totally right. Unless, getting off on it is thinking that it's wrong, in which case that's right too. Just go for it. So the third myth, what women like in bed and what men like in bed. Those of you in marketing, come on, that is not how we do segmentation. It's not like women like pink and they like flowers and men like blue and sailing and hats. So it's exactly the same when you're dealing with a partner. You have to look at them as an individual, or as I like to say, an erotic snowflake. So as erotic snowflakes, we all just, when we're in bed with somebody, you need to appreciate that person as the person you're with at that time. And the best way to figure out what they want in bed is not through gender, it's through asking them what they like. So my fourth myth, and it's my favorite at the moment, is the idea that sex is for the young. Young people are having all of the sex. Well, a lot of studies, and a lot of them coming out from La Trobe University, in fact, are actually pushing that age range way up. Let's put it this way. While we're so busy checking Instagram feeds and swiping right, who here has parents who are recently retired with a whole lot of time on their hands? Interestingly, coupled with this statistic is another statistic that shows in the last 4 years alone, this age range of 60 plus, STI transmission has doubled. It's extraordinary, right? And the story that data is telling me is that because we have these myths, we don't even target education at the right group that need it. So we need to grow up a bit. Like obviously, because then we'll have great sex. And we need to talk about this. Like we talk about anything else that is this important. Not only will it hopefully make us a happier, healthier, and also richer society, but it will also help go towards actually tackling some of the really serious issues that go unchecked in the sex toy world. Because for some arcane reason, this still all does live in the shadows. We have rules and regulations to protect us as consumers in every other industry that do not exist in the sex toy world. For example, say you go to a shop and you buy a dog chew toy. You take that home and you find out a week later that it is made of carcinogenic substances. You would be pretty outraged. You would take it back and you would probably sue. I can tell you now, there are dozens of sex shops in Melbourne that that sells sex toys made of known carcinogenic materials such as phthalates. There is a shop that is 500 meters down the road from mine on Bridge Road that sells this toy that looks like a pair of plastic Barbie doll legs and smells like petrol. It's made of rubber, that's porous, it's poisonous. The last thing you want to do is to put that in any orifice of your body. The thing is, this goes on because no politician really wants to put up their hand and claim to be the person undoing all of the sex laws. Thankfully, what I hope, we don't need them because of technology and the power it has given to every single one of us as consumers to bring the change on. So, let's just get it out there. Sex is amazing. It should be debated, just like any other part of the economy. And like I say to all of my favorite retail customers as they walk out the store, go fuck yourself.